Protectorate is being led by Grand Scrutator Severius. His battle group includes a Revenger, named the Creator's Rebuke, a Vigilant, named Rampart of the Righteous, and a Repenter, named Pyre. He also has a Vassal Mechanic, named Godwin Atwood, Exemplar Warder Elias Gade, and a Reclaimer Gatekeeper, named Razak Adokar. A unit of Exemplar Bastions, led by Ansel Ellsworth, along with Brill Ashburn and Victor Murdoch. And 2 units of Choir of Menoth, led by War Priest Dorn Gilfin and Dexter Hitch, with neophytes Barak Lovat, Alexei Orlov, Abedin Sadhadi, and Farhan Ul Upra. Protectorate chose the command cards Spotters, Careful Reconnaissance, Savagery, Arcane Forces, and Take Cover. Cryx is being led by Gorshade the Bastard.
You bastard!
His battle group includes a Defiler named Sludge, a Slayer named Torment, a Stalker named Daddy Longlegs, aka Big Daddy D, aka Darnell, a Ripjaw named Ripjaw, and Deathwalker. He also has a Soul Trapper, Bane Lord Tartarus, Darag Wraith, a Necrotech, Hellslinger Phantom, and though not included in his list, but joining the fray through Gorshade's feet, a unit of Bane Warriors. Cryx chose the command cards Power Swell, Arcane Forces, Hit and Run, Spotters, and Old Faithful. Protectorate won the starting role and chose to go second. For terrain layout, we went ham with nature pieces on the left side of the board and buildings on the right. For scenario, we used a modified version of Scenic Steamroller, designed by Thomas and Dessa O'Neill, modified with permission. A link to the variant is in the description below. Rolling a D3, one piece of terrain was chosen to be scored. Donna, playing Protectorate, chose the boulder near the center of the table to be scored by warrior models. Cryx was deployed in 3 separate groups. To the far left was Darag Wraith, the Soul Trapper, Tartarus, and Hellslinger Phantom. Offset to the center right was the Slayer, Deathwalker, and Gorshade, with the Necrotech behind them. To the far right was the Ripjaw and the Defiler. The Stalker was advance deployed ahead of the Slayer. Protectorate was deployed offset to the left side of the table. On the far left was the Repenter and the Vigilant, with Dorn's Choir and the Mechanic behind them. Severius was just to the right, with the Bastions to his side and the Reclaimer behind them. To the far right was the Revenger, with Dexter's Choir behind it. Gade was advance deployed ahead of the Repenter. Leading a small crusading force towards the city of Hillebrand, Grand Scrutator Severius felt an unnerving feeling in his soul. Unbeknownst to him, at that very moment, the eldritch bastard known as Gorshade was in search of a rumored deposit of necrotite located just southwest of the city's border.
You bastard!
Cryx. Turn 1. Nudging his iron steed forward, Darag raised his necroscythe high overhead, invigorating the undead at his side. In turn, the Hellslinger, Soul Trapper, and Tartarus rushed out to cut off the Midnights heading towards the hillside. Crusade then sent his Bonejacks running to the outside of the stone towers. With both flanks secured, the Cryxian Warcaster moved his entourage forward towards the Necrotite deposit. The Stalker ran to the edge of the large tower. With Torment moving just behind him. The ethereal form of Deathwalker drifted ahead, while the Necrotech took up position at the base of the small tower. Lastly, Crusade moved near the Necrotech and waved his left hand in a sweeping motion, casting an eerie protective shadow over his Warjacks. Protectorate. Turn 1. Having scouted ahead, Elias Gade reported back to Severius on the Cryxian horrors he spotted moving into Hillebrand. The Grand Scrutator commanded his force forward to meet the Dragonfather's minions head-on. Rampart was sent barreling to the left side of the forest, with Gade taking up position by his side. Pyre ran to cut off the mounted Necromancer moving towards the western hills. Godwin moved behind the Vigilant, girded by the Warjack's massive presence. Marching forward in song, Dorn and his choir sung a protective hymn of passage over Rampart and Pyre. To the right side of the forest, the Grand Scrutator sent Rebuke running to secure the area. Dexter's choir followed closely behind, blessing the Revenger with a song of shielding. As Victor moved just behind the center of the forest, Anzo and Brill worked their way into the foliage amongst the fir trees. Razak tried to keep pace with the heavily armed knights, moving as swiftly as he could in his robes of office. With his army securing the forest, Severius moved to the right of the stone wall. From the safety of his position, the Elder Warcaster blessed Rebuke and the Bastions in prayer. Anzo and his exemplars were granted the Lawgiver's divine vision, while the Revenger was emboldened with the defensive warding. Cryx. Turn 2. Catching sight of the Bastions moving through the forest, Tartarus shrieked, springing forward into Brill. As the Bane Lord came into range, the knight slashed across his chest in defense, cutting deep with the blade of his consecrated halberd. Despite being critically injured, Tartarus managed to cut away at Brill's armor. Menoth's vision saved the knight from suffering any harm. Striking rapidly once more, Tartarus drove the blade of Rivener into the bastion's side. Leaning on the sanguine bond shared with his brother knights, Brill suffered only a portion of the pain, with Anzo and Victor supporting him. Having done all he could to weaken the bastions, the wounded Banelord retreated away from the tree line. The Soul Trapper slithered into the opening ahead of Tartarus, serving both to fend off any threats to the Farmer Mulgar chieftain, as well as spotting targets for Hellslinger Phantom. Aiming both of his Raystorm pistols at Brill, Hellslinger fired a pair of Phantom Seeker shots into the forest. The first ghostly round penetrated the knight's breastplate. As he cried out in agony, his brothers once more took a measure of the pain to sustain him. Hellslinger's second shot flew wide, however, clipping needles off a branch of a nearby fir tree. Darag's hell-wrought steed trotted onto the hillside, and the necromancer reached a hand towards Rampart, unleashing a burst of hellfire to engulf the warjack. Ripjaw bounded to the back corner of a large stone tower. With sludge moving up to his side. In an effort to fend the Midnights off from the Necrotite deposit, Gorshade ordered Darnell to charge into Rebuke. The spider-like Bonejack came crashing down on the Revenger, slashing at it with a razor-sharp eviscerator. Deflecting most of the blow's force with a repulsor shield, Rebuke drove the Stalker back out of engagement and out of range of its second eviscerator blade. Torment ran up to support Darnell. With the Necrotech not far behind. Deathwalker secured the northern side of the Necrotite deposit. As Gorshade moved into the center of town. Reciting an archaic, lamenting curse over the battlefield, the Warcaster drained the magic might out of his enemies. With his Bonejack's vantage point from their flanking maneuver, Gorshade then channeled a hex into Dexter's neophytes. The blast devastated Forhan and Abaddon. But Rebuke managed to survive unharmed. As the young war priests fell slain, Razak claimed their souls for the Creator. Protectorate. Turn 1. Severius blessed Rebuke with an increased measure of power, as well as continuing the defensive benediction he'd previously prayed over the warjack. He channeled a veritable death sentence on the Slayer through his Revenger. Having cursed the warjack, Severius then flooded Torment in Menoth's fury, immolating the heavy Cryxian nightmare. Seeing the Bonejacks working towards his right flank, Severius moved beside Elias Gade. Both choirs marched forth in unison, singing a hymn to strengthen the Midnight Warjacks as the battle raged on around them. Godwin worked feverishly with his multi-tool to repair the damage to Rampart's armor. The Vigilant then charged into the Soul Trapper and Tartarus, crushing each of them under devastating blows from its shield fists. Recognizing that his prey was just outside the range of his crossbows, Elias advanced nearer to the forest and let loose with both arrows. Though the first slammed in the dirt at the necromancer's feet, the second lodged into Darag's left shoulder. The exemplar warder then ducked to take cover at the edge of the tree line. With a careful reconnaissance provided by the Vigilant's forward position, Ansel rallied his bastions to charge into the hillside. Leading the charge, Burl hacked at the front leg of Darag's steed, felling the hell-wrought stallion. As Darag dismounted and raised his necroscythe to retaliate, Victor's consecrated halberd caught the necromancer just below the chin, nearly beheading him in a gory display. As Darag's corpse slumped to the ground, Elias turned his sights on the Eldritch Warcaster. Taking advantage of the Hellslinger's temporary corporeal form following its attack on them, Ansel made the ghostly gunslinger pay a brutal price at the edge of his blade. With the left flank of the battlefield secured, Pyre ran beside Rampart en route to the Necrotite deposit. The Reclaimer moved closer to Rebuke and used the essence of a soul to bless the Warjack with a glimpse of the fate to come. The Revenger then charged into Torment with its halberd. Carving into the Helljack's torso and left arm, Rebuke leaned on its future sight to add an extra effort to the attack afterwards. Torment stumbled, finding its left arm and maneuverability were now impaired. Slamming its repulsor shield into the disoriented Helljack, Rebuke forced it backwards into the face of a fearful Necrotech behind it. With Deathwalker securing the Necrotite deposit, Gorshade felt his power begin to swell. Jim, the robots are at it again. What? The robots, Jim. Rowboats? Robots. Donuts? Oh, Jim, put your hearing aid in. What? They're scaring me, Jimmy. The little ones smell funny, too. Cryx. Turn 3. Though the fire continued to burn on Torment, his armor was unscathed by the flames. Relying on an old faithful enchantment, Gorshade repaired what he could of Torment's damage through arcane manipulation of its mechanica. Granting a portion of the Dragonfather's accursed power to his Slayer and Stalker, the Cryxian Warcaster also maintained the limited curse he'd plagued Severius with. Sending Ripjaw around the wreckage of a long-destroyed Warjack, Gorshade commanded Sludge to position itself to bathe the Midnights in its toxic spray. Both Dexter and Razak were covered in caustic muck that sizzled as it ate through their robes and melted their flesh from the bones, killing both in slow, agonizing torture. The Necrotech mended the tears in Torment's armor with its vice claw. Before the Slayer moved in to drive its tusk into Rebuke. Headbutting the Revenger in a violent attack, Torment drove the Midnight Warjack to its knees. With Rebuke no longer a threat, Big Daddy D charged into the Grand Scrutator, concentrating its power to ensure the Eviscerator blade found its mark. Severus was able to reinforce his power field to deflect some of the damage, but still suffered a significant gash to his left leg. Having regained his composure, Severus parried the Stalker's second attack with his Staff of Judgment. Gorshade positioned himself to get the bastions in range before unleashing a hex onto Brill and his fellow knights. Exerting his power to cast the spell accurately, he erupted a vile blast of energy onto the Exemplars. Taking the brunt of the blast onto himself, Brill's armor managed to protect him from the worst of it. Victor was initially unscathed in the attack, but as Ansel's armor was breached, all three knights shared in the pain to maintain the unit's strength. The Eldritch Warcaster then called forth the souls of long-dead soldiers who fell defending Hillebrand ages ago. Rising from the ground, the skeletal Bane warriors surrounded their new master defensively. Gorshade sent the Banes forward, crashing into the face of the Warjacks moving towards him. The dark shroud surrounding the Banes eroded the armor of their enemies before their axe blades fell upon them. The first Bane's axe was easily deflected by Rampart, but the rest carved into both Midnight Jacks with their blades. Deathwalker's position controlling the Necrotite deposit further solidified Taruk's claim to the cursed city of Hillebrand. Protectorate. Turn 3. As the Revenger began to power back up, Severus drove the Warjack to exert itself to stand. Cursed by Gorshade's lamentation, the Grand Scrutator felt the weight of the Dragonfather's evil hanging over him, forcing him to pray even more fervently than ever before. After blessing both Pyre and Rebuke with more benedictions, Severius called down Menoth's divine might onto his enemies. Still favoring the injury to his leg, the Elder Warcaster stumbled away from the Stalker, towards the safety behind his force's advancing line. Dorn's choir bathed Rampart and Pyre in a hymn of battle once more. And the Repenter turns its flamethrower onto the heretic standing before it. spewing Menoth's fury from its barrel. Pyre sent flames washing over the nearest Bane, and even caught the Stalker in the spray of fire. Adding to the concentration and intensity of the flames, Pyre destroyed the Bane and critically damaged Darnell. With another Bane just within reach of its war flail, the Repenter then brought the weapon crashing down onto the Skeletal Knight, crushing it outright. Rampart attempted to strike both Banes nearest to it, but only one was caught in the blow. Expending its power to try to attack once again, the Bane stubbornly deflected the second blow as well. Elias Gade charged into the Stalker, driving his bayonet blades into the heart of the Bonejack. Turning his crossbows on the sludge, Elias sent both arrows slamming into the Defiler. The mechanic braved the carnage all around to move close enough to repair some of the damage to Pyre. Rebuke retaliated against Torment with everything it had, but inflicted very little damage to the Helljack. Its halberd nicked at the Slayer's left arm. But its repulsor shield did no damage, only serving to repel Torment back once more. With the Bane that had been blocking their path crushed by Rampart, Anzo and his Bastions charged into Goreshade. Anzo's blade barely cut into the Warcaster's armor. Though Brill's halberd was deflected by Bloodcleaver in a well-timed parry. As Goreshade was distracted by the other Exemplar's attacks, Victor caught the Cryxian off guard and landed a heavy blow that was only partially weakened when Goreshade reinforced his power field. With Victor now threatening Deathwalker, Goreshade's control of the area was temporarily stalled. Cryx. Turn 4. The Necrotech extinguished the flames on Torment's armor. As Goreshade worked to keep the curse of lamentation plaguing the Midnights. Continuing his work, the Necrotech repaired what it could of the Slayer's damage. Torment then drove both of its death claws into Rebuke, shredding the Warjack's left arm, cortex, and central torso stabilizer controls. Though Goreshade controlled the Defiler's aim, Sledge's caustic spray attack was easily dodged by Gade. Elias's fortune would not last, however, as Ripjaw bounded into the Exemplar Warder, carving into his side with its bone saw. The remaining Bane warriors hacked at Rampart and Pyre with their war axes. Rampart suffered less damage, but the well-placed attack still managed to cripple his left arm. finding himself unable to unleash his arcane attacks due to Severius' crippling curse. Crusade instead took the fight to the Exemplars, who dared to challenge him. Expending all but the last bit of his vile power, the Warcaster saw half of his attacks deflected by the heavily armored knights. When Bloodcleaver's blade did taste flesh, the Bastions were able to lean on their sanguine bond to stand defiantly, even as each was cut close to death in the end. Though bloody and battered, Victor's presence at the Necrotite deposit was enough to nullify Deathwalker's advantage. Protectorate. Turn 4. Severius granted an increased measure of blessings onto Rebuke, and continued the prayers he'd bespoke upon the faithful, and the curses he'd languished upon the heretics. Gade's first bayonet slash cut away at the control mechanism of Ripjaw's bone saw. But the second utterly destroyed the Bonejack's cortex and arc node. Attempting to destroy Ripjaw once and for all, Elias was surprised to see the battered Bonejack duck below the first arrow he fired at it. The second arrow, fired at point-blank range, plunged into Ripjaw's torso and finally managed to silence the violently spastic Chicken Jack. The Grand Screwtator walked a precarious edge along the stone wall, working to get closer to Sludge while staying outside the range of Gorshade's Curse of Lamentation. Calling upon ancient arcane forces to extend his reach, the Menoth Warcaster sent a burst of holy fire to crash down onto the Defiler, burning the Bonejack into a heap of useless scrap. Godwin moved closer to Rampart and worked to repair the Warjack. Dorn's choir sung a hymn of battle once again. While still battling Torment, Rebuke maneuvered to engage the Necrotech as well. If it was not able to slay the Necrotech, it would no doubt continue to keep the Slayer upright and a threat to the Lawgiver's faithful. With its left arm crippled, the Revenger was guided by Severius to exert itself as it slammed its repulsor shield into Torment. Following the attack up, Rebuke plunged the blade of its halberd into the Necrotech's head, ending its miserable undead life. Pyre turned its weapons on the Banes, blocking their path, burning one to ash with its flamethrower, and crushing the other under its warflail. When the flames poured over the first Bane warrior, Victor felt the heat as the spray just narrowly missed his position. Severius then sent Rampart charging into the Slayer. Both of its shield fists slammed into the massive Helljack, though only one blow did any damage. Tired of the Cryxian plague and the casualties Gorshade's forces were inflicting upon the faithful, the Grand Screwtator ordered the Bastions to act, and to do so with righteous, violent intent. Victor turned his attention to Deathwalker. Despite her incorporeal nature, the magic blessings on his consecrated halbert's blade allowed it to cut into her and free her soul from Gorshade's bondage. Inspired by his brother's furious attack, Ansel slashed deep into the Eldritch's chest. doing more damage than even a spike to the Warcaster's power field would be able to withstand. As Gorshade's corpse slumped to the ground, the day was claimed in the Creator's name.